Okay, mic is on. Now we're ready to begin. Welcome to the December 15th, 2022 meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. My name is Gary Jones, and I'm the chair of the committee. When called upon, applicants and speakers will come to the front podium to speak. Only one person at a time should come to the podium. Don't approach the podium until vacated by the previous speaker. Speak into the microphone, please, and identify yourself and provide your address for the record when you begin speaking. Address your comments, questions, and testimony to the committee. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. It is unnecessary to repeat testimony previously given by others. Citizens may address the committee on agenda items by responding to chair's call by speakers during discussion on each item and signing the speaker log on the podium. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair's presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and/or remove that person from the council chambers if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior. Please see the agenda for more information about these requirements. If you parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage, which is north of John Rex Elementary School, or in the Arts District parking garage just south of City Hall, please contact staff and they'll provide you with parking information in order to get your parking ticket validated. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You will then select the Downtown Design Review Committee meeting, then click on an agenda item and the relevant documents will come up below. I would like to recognize our newest board member, Eric Schmidt, who is now joining us. So let's give him a big round of applause for stepping up. And then on a sad note, but a great note for her, Desiree Golden, who has provided support for us over the past year, is going to be leaving us for another position. And we would like to extend our appreciations by giving you another round of applause. With that, Desiree, roll call.
Committee Member Jones.
Here.
Committee Member Brannon.
Here.
Committee Member Blatt.
Here.
Committee Member Copeland.
Here.
Committee Member Serrar. Committee Member Schmidt.
Here.
Committee Member Trulio. Here. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, seeing that we have a quorum, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. A motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so was that a
Blatt, Brannon.
Blatt? Okay, thank you.
Okay, Blatt, Brannon, motion. Please vote. Votes have been cast. We clearly have a majority. Motion passes. So we move to the next item on the agenda, which is cases that have been withdrawn. We have none. So then we move on to continuance requests. We have a continuance request for DTCA-22-0070 at 700 Couch Drive.
And staff is recommending this be continued to your January meeting, which the date is, that would be the January 19th meeting.
So with the continuance motion, we don't need to add the January, we just vote to continue, correct?
You need to a date certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I need a motion to continue to the specific date of January.
I motion that we continue the application to the January 19th, 2023 Downtown Design Review Committee meeting.
Second?
Justin Brannon, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a Copeland-Brannon motion. Please vote. We're still waiting for it to show. Do you want to proceed with a voice vote on this, or?
Yes, Committee Member Brannon, how do you vote?
Yay.
Thank you.
It's not showing who made the motion on the screen.
Got it.
It's still not showing who made the motion, but it was Committee Member Copeland who made the motion to continue. There it is.
Just showed up. Sorry for the delay. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Then on the next round of the agenda, we have cases for individual consideration. The first one is
Wait,
We have the consent docket.
consent.
We need to do the
Glad you caught me.
consent docket.
Yes, we have the consent docket. I'd already moved on because I need to recuse myself. So at this point, Justin will take over.
Yeah.
okay.
Next on the item is DTCA-22-00070 at 700 Couch Drive. Oh, no, next one, sorry. DTCA-22-00079 at 428 West California Avenue. Staff?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent docket.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just missed all of that.
I'll second.
So we have a motion, Blatt, second by Trujillo, to approve the consent agenda. Thank you. And then if you want to tell Gary that he can come back.
Perfect.
Now next, Now next on the agenda, we have cases for individual consideration. The first case is DTCA 22-00065 at 820 Dean A. McGee Avenue. Zach?
Thank you. And let me get, so we have this CA, but also on your agenda later for a vote is a CE relative to the alley. So you're going to notice on this project that it goes over the alley, and that's why. And you're also going to recognize a lot of these pictures I took because I didn't go back out, so I used the CE pictures and the demo pictures we had. So there were a couple of CAs a few months ago that you all had on this site. Two of them were for demos, some older buildings, and one included a parking garage, and those were all approved. So this is 4th and Chartel. It does not include the corner building. And so it actually stretches into 2 zoning districts. So we have DTD1 and DTD2. Luckily, they're almost identical. So that didn't create a problem. And then you have the road, the Dean A. McGee, literally kind of dead ends into their parking garage. Where it says project site, that's where the parking garage is, and they've already been approved for that, but I just wanted to show you the size of this project that is coming in. So these were taken back when there were still buildings on the site that you guys saw before that had been part of a lumber yard and some other businesses. Some had been burned, and so the alley itself is physically there. They are not proposing to, and I'm going to combine both of these reports kind of in my presentation. They're not proposing to close it at the corner. That property owner is not involved in this project. And the alley there is an integral part of the entrance and exit into a site, picking up trash and that kind of thing. So this is looking towards Chartel at the apartment complex that I think is almost totally finished, and I believe it's called The Muse, the last thing I saw. And so, which is that one right there. And then, as you can see, headed westward toward Classen, it might be a platted alley, but it's not in, even though people have driven it, because you can see where the vehicles have jumped it. And then Francis actually goes down it's platted just to the alley, and then south of there, it has been vacated, but there's access agreements. And so that is being used for access into part of this site. And so around it, we have a parking lot that was from many years ago that maybe 1 or 2 of you remember when that came in. It had a building on it. We were hoping they could reuse it and put parking inside it, and that didn't work out. So they got approved for that parking lot. Big warehouse that's next to it. And then on the Dean A. McGee, there's some small brick buildings that are used for offices and have been redone. So, crap, I'll leave it there if anybody wants to see a picture of something. No. I'll put the first picture. So they're proposing to construct 3- and 4-story building on this site. It's a multifamily project. They are going to need variances from the setback, which is the maximum 10 foot from the property line at the street in some areas. And so I will talk about that later. So the 2 previous CA applications were back in May, so you might not remember because you've slept since then. But the parking garage that you approved is a 4-story parking garage that they've been going through the permitting process on, and I'm sure that hopefully we'll be getting started on that soon. And so later on the agenda, we have CE 1075, which is for the closure of the alley that I mentioned. And they are going to be vacating it and relocating any utilities that are physically located in the alley. So in under development regulations, as I mentioned, they're going to need a variance from the setback. And in the information that they provided, there's 3 different street frontages where it's not going to comply. It's from Northwest 4th, North Chartel, and Dean A. McGee. So on Northwest 4th, I divided these in the staff report. I thought it was logical to me. They're proposing stoops so that we have literally, the units have their own stoop that comes out, which I think is going to be a really great feel, and connect the sidewalk area with the unit. The stoops are not going to encroach in the right-of-way, which staff really appreciates because we have some projects that have done that, like directly across the street, and it makes it really tight. Staff really feels that this is a really good proposal at this location. They don't fully meet it because they have an angled property line. So building an angled building doesn't necessarily work. You really kind of need those. Well, you could do that, but in this case, they're not doing that. So what they state is they've designed a series of steps in that facade along the length of the property to illustrate the intent of meeting it. On Dean A. McGee, what they're proposing there is they want a drop-off area for the entrance into the complex. So the drop-off area is going to be on private property. Obviously, that's going to push the building back to give them the area that they need. And they're doing it with paver stones, and they have that entire area is, activated with different type of stones with landscaping and that kind of thing. And the only way to do that would be to push the building back more than 10 feet. Also, they're doing that because Dean A. McGee dead ends, and there's really no place to turn around. So if somebody was dropping someone off, they're actually providing them a place where they can come in here and drop them off, pull through the drive-through, and then turn around without having to turn around in the street. So they're saying in that area, the building facade will be set back a minimum of 40 feet to a maximum of 42 feet from that property line to give them that area for the vehicular circulation. On North Chartel, the building facade is not going to meet it at the corner of North Chartel and Dean A. McGee due to the design, once again, of the vehicular area, which you can see that from the site plan that was attached on that link that you got. So for the reasons that I've mentioned in those 3 locations, primarily the drop-off area for 2 of those street frontages, and the design with the stoops that they pulled out of the right-of-way so that we still have pedestrian circulation sidewalk area that's not pinched, staff is supportive of the layout of this project and their need for a variance. On development guidelines, we needed to bring up the cladding because of the fiber cement siding. We're seeing more and more of this especially on multifamily projects. We've had a lot of discussions on several projects that you've had over the last few months. And even though the overall total percent of fiber cement used for this project is 51%, but the guideline says per facade, so you really have to break it down per facade. And their interior courtyards have a higher percent than we find on the exterior of the building. I think the concerns that have come up not only is appearance, but location, durability, if you have it on a first floor level, lawn equipment damaging it, that kind of thing. And so we have a range 45 to 65%, and that includes the interior courtyard facades. So several mixed-use and multifamily projects have been utilizing fiber cement panels, and they have been approved, including the project that's across the street from this one. So we have the Muse, which is across the street, West Village, which is multiple buildings just down the street, and then you have the Lift complex. And so we just wanted to point that out. So it's not atypical for us to get these in with this material. So staff is recommending approval of the application with the condition that the applicant shall obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the regulation requiring the first 2 floors to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way. And then there's a second motion that would be needed then in that case, which provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the regulations requiring the first 2 floors to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way. So, do you have any questions for me?
It appears there are not any questions,
Okay,
so
so
at this time we'll allow
We
that.
have the applicant who has come all the way from Colorado.
Welcome.
Did you bring any snow with you today? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay, so if you could just identify yourself and
Good morning, committee. My name is Mario Cirelli. I'm with Horde Copeland Mock in Denver, Colorado. We are the architects for the project. Address 1800 Wazee, Denver, Colorado 80202. So thank you. Thanks for the time this morning. I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on what Ms. Griggs presented. And the first thing, if we can get maybe the site plan.
was trying to do and I just went. Okay, so what does that mean for you here? X this out.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, I just can't see from there. Click and that one.
There we go.
Whatever you did down there to make it big. You just have to scroll.
Okay,
It's slow
great.
doing
Just
it.
need
Sorry.
just need the one page. There we go. So this site plan exhibit should be enough for me to sort of elaborate. I think Ms. Griggs did a great job. The one thing that I would like to point out, or two things. First, as it relates to the build to and the frontage, specifically on Dean A. McGee, where we have chosen Dean A. McGee as our primary building entrance, and with that, the zoning code provides for a 60-40 relief of that build to. So if it was not the primary entrance to the building, the build to requirement would be for the entire length of the facade. But because it's our primary entrance, I believe it's a 60%.
Yeah, you could have up to 40% setback more than the 10 feet.
Right. So with that, obviously, we exceed that a little bit, but I think for the reasons already stated, the idea that this plaza is going to give us an opportunity to not only have safe and easy access to our building with a hotel-style drop-off, but it actually allows us to open that plaza up, activate it, even using Dean A. McGee as a connection to the downtown skyline. So, downtown is sort of planned north, planned south, east. So with the building situated the way it is and the plaza being there, we also have located our amenities on the 3rd floor and the 4th floor, and they also overlook the plaza and have views back to downtown. So I think for those reasons, we took a challenge and sort of turned it into an amenity, and that plaza is really, it's about the car drop-off, but it's also an opportunity to activate the ground floor and turn it into an amenity. And then briefly, the stoops, like Ms. Griggs said, where we have on Chartel and on 4th Street, we've used the street frontage as an opportunity to really engage the streetscape, so that we're not sort of looking at a sheer face of a building. And we think that, you know, our ownership team was willing and able to make an investment on that feature. And it's just, it should make for a really successful sort of engagement of the building to the site and the surrounding areas just by virtue of having pedestrian activation and permanent stoops to those dwelling units. And then just lastly, the idea of the fiber cement. So we do exceed the limit of the fiber cement, and I will say that just by the nature of the mass of our building, where we have this interior courtyard, we've employed the fiber cement, and it's a handsome product, and it will be lap siding and panel in various orientations, horizontal and vertical. And those fiber cement pieces will be combined with other architectural metals and brick. So the idea that there's more than what is allowed is something that we considered. And so when we were choosing our material palette, we've got premium materials on D&A McGee, on Chartel, and on the 4th Street facade. And we've also brought those premium materials into the courtyard, but in doing so, we've limited and we've strategically used the fiber cement so that we could meet budget and also provide sort of a cohesive design between the two. So all of that said, I think it, you know, the project has it was done well and with thought to the materials, and I think we were pretty successful in it.
Questions?
No questions. I think it's a very handsome project. I like what you've done. I like the way it's been sided. I love the porches and how you pulled back from the property line. So, and it's really nice because when we approved the parking garage, I know that there was a lot of questions about what's going to happen, and I think that this is actually an enhancement. So, well done.
Thank you.
I do have a quick question. With the front entry being pulled off of D&A McGee and Chartel, kind of nestled into the front of your building, what is the lighting going to look like in that area?
What is the
only thing I don't see in this packet is lighting.
Oh, the site lighting. Yep, so there's within that plaza, so the site lighting for the plaza and the main entry, there's architectural lighting located on the building. There will be lighting from a canopy over the main entry vestibule. And then there will be site lighting with bollards, standalone bollards, as well as site lighting within the raised planters where you see the large trees.
So I think what you were referring to, because I don't have lighting listed in the scope of the project, and normally I would have done that. So what I'm thinking is we'll just need to come back and address that with a revision to specifically address that lighting.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I like your design. I think it looks great. Your plans are great. I also have one more question so I'm trying to understand the 10-foot setback that we're talking about, and how much pedestrian room is actually left for pedestrians, especially off of Chartel. I couldn't necessarily find a dimension for that sidewalk. Do you know what that width is? It looked smaller than 10, but it's hard to tell.
The minimum is 5, unless it's
Okay.
adjacent to the curb on that street, and then it's 6.
Okay.
And the building face is 7.2 off of the property line,
7.2.
so another.
Okay. I'll do some math. I saw an overall dimension real fast.
Are there additional questions? If there are no additional questions, does anyone from the audience wish to speak?
I think we're trying to answer her question.
Oh, we're still, okay.
Exhibit number 3, if we can see that screen, is 7.3, the sidewalk. Is that?
Okay.
So are we good? Again, we'll ask if there are any comments or questions from anyone here in the chamber. Seeing as there are none,
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in sections C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the regulation requiring the first 2 floors to be at or within 10 feet of the street right away.
second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes. Congratulations. And
Well,
we're
we
all
have
looking
one more
forward to it.
motion that needs to be
Oh, one more
made.
motion? Two-part. Thank you.
And then I'll make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance from the regulations requiring the first 2 floors to be at or within 10 feet of the street right of way.
Second?
Copeland second.
Vote, please.
Thank you.
Now the motion is passed with both motions.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Okay, that moves us to the next case on the individual consideration agenda, which is DTCA-22-0072 at 111 Classen Drive and 515 Northwest 10th Street.
Okay.
Beth?
Let me get the pictures up. Oh, wow, how did that do that so fast? Anyway, okay, so you all might recall that you had an application before you a while back to demolish the old IMSA site. And then, let me grab my staff report instead of just and you approved the demolition, and that building has been demolished. And then you had before you CE 1081, which was a little unusual. That was the one to actually close, and they're going to subsequently vacate that adjacent block of Classen Drive. And you recommended approval, and that goes to council, I believe it's next month, January 2023. And so they've come through now with the proposal for the proposed building. This only involves what I'm referring to as the west side, even though that's kind of running at an angle. It's only involving the site that's in yellow. I don't have an application for the Plaza Court side, which makes it a little unusual. So we really are only talking to the center line of the street, even though some of the drawings show the other side of the street. So, and when I get to the end of these, we'll look at those drawings. And so what's proposed is a mixed-use project, and they're going to need variance from the setback and the height, and I will talk about that one. So, and this is
So
interesting.
Laura, this is,
It's not working.
I was sharing my screen because I thought
Oh,
you
you're
needed me to
sharing your
share my screen on
I'm
this one.
like, it's not.
Do you want me to put it back on that computer? Is that one?
If that works, that's fine.
And that way you can
Oh,
navigate.
okay. So now what do I need to do with that?
Sorry,
We have a
technical
mix of
difficulties
PDFs and
today.
PowerPoints, and it's just, it doesn't like us today. So we're 72. Yeah. So these slides were from when we did the CE case. And so the green line is approximately the center line of the street. And so I was just trying to show you, we're only dealing with this to the center line of the street. And so basically in this view, it's from the center line of the street to the left, which is to the west. And the building has already been torn down if you've been up that way. And so this is right at Northwest 10th where they have the traffic circle. So it's kind of a unique location. And I'm going to get to the end. Where we have. There. So what they're showing here is the blue line is the existing lot line. And the red line is the proposed lot line. When the street is vacated, their ownership then would go to the center of the street. And so you can see the proposed location of the building has been shifted over the existing property line. And so we ended up with a lot of conditions that we're going to talk about here that are a little unusual to this site. They have a parking lot, which is on 2 street frontages, and so that's a guideline we're getting ready to talk to. And they address that with some justification. And there's a dog park proposed, there's a lot of landscaping proposed, there's inset parking spaces proposed on this corner, which will be kind of, I'll call it a companion building to the Plaza Court building across the street. The only part of the building that does not meet the height requirement is what they're terming is a potential restaurant site, which is on the south end of the building, down closest to the traffic circle. And they indicated with the documentation that they submitted that the restaurant/diner space is an extension is proposed as a single story so as to create a strong differentiation from the whole and provide a soft step towards the building's full height. Keeping this element at 1 story retains visual clarity between the building's upper and lower level uses while maintaining sight lines to important local context. In your packet, there were numerous examples of flat-iron buildings that the applicant provided that included 1-story, I think it's pronounced prows. And so the applicant also indicated they don't really want to compete with Plaza Court because, I mean, everyone knows the historical nature of the Plaza Court building, how long it's been there. And they felt that they would be competing with them if they had a 2-story prow that would meet our height requirement, but that's not what they really want to do because they want to fit with the area. Triangular shaped lot obviously makes for unique circumstances. And then you have the traffic circle, which kind of comes into play as well. So the applicant, they didn't want to overpower the corner, which you could do if you had a 2- or 3-story building that you pulled all the way down to the property line right there. You could really overpower that corner right there at the traffic circle. So using the 1-story prow, they felt it could become more a part of the area. They also are going to be set back more than 10 feet, which part of that is because it's a triangular lot. And so when you have your setback, you end up with pointy ends, which don't necessarily work well. Because of the configuration of the lot, it's really hard to evaluate this requirement for them, as well as since they're going to be closing and vacating Classen Drive. On the surface, you would look at it and say, well, they totally meet that requirement on Classen Drive, but that's going to become irrelevant because when that's vacated, that's not a street frontage. So it's literally the corners, the northern and the southern corners. So as can be seen on this with a center line, the proposed footprint of the building creates pedestrian areas on the north and south ends of the building. And these areas will flow into the adjacent pedestrian plaza, creating programmable spaces for various types of events. The applicant's requesting that consideration be given to the proposed building's relationship to existing structures and circulation patterns. And the applicant referenced a particular section 59-7200.1.a that speaks to promoting compatible, complementary, and appropriate new development as related to its surrounding context. Staff would agree that the proposed building location could result in a more complementary project than if the building met the build-to line regulations, and for this reason, staff supports the request. And I noted in the staff report that while the site plan shows both current and potential future property lines, assuming Classen Drive is vacated, and District Court and the project is being evaluated based on the potential future street vacation. If the street is not vacated, the project would be required to be resubmitted for review and approval. And then next, we need to talk about guidelines. So we have a guideline against parking lots on corners. We've had several that have come in over the last few years. And I list some of those in here, which are, we had one at Classen Boulevard and Northwest 9th that some of you might remember because we had a really tough grade to buck with the street. Remember how steep that was sloped? And so we had sidewalks that had a bunch of switchbacks and railings and all that stuff. And they anticipated at some point, the buildings across the street, that they were going to have to build a bigger building, and they were going to build their bigger building where their parking lot was. We then had one at West California Avenue and Fred Jones that you might recall, where they were going to tear down a building and construct a parking lot, and they were wanting that to support the growth of existing and future businesses in that area. There was another one that you approved recently for the rescue mission that you might recall, and they needed parking for the services that they provided. While staff believes that prominent street corner locations such as this one should be reserved for buildings, it seems that constructing a parking lot on this site would meet the current needs and not impede the construction of a future building. And they did indicate in the information they provided that they had looked at doing a structured parking, but that just wasn't feasible because of the shape of it and the cost and how many parking spaces you would actually get. So staff is recommending approval of this application with several conditions. The first is that the applicant obtains variances from the Board of Adjustment to the regulation requiring a minimum height of 2 stories or 30 feet, and from the regulation requiring the first 2 floors of new construction to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way. The next is that CE 01081 is approved by City Council. Condition C, the right-of-way of Classen Drive between Northwest 10th Street and Northwest 11th Street is vacated in District Court. D, the applicant receives the necessary approvals from the Traffic and Transportation Commission and City Council for the proposed set-in parking spaces in the right-of-way. And I didn't bring that up earlier. I believe they're just starting on that process. There will have to be ordinances approved by council for any required ADA parking spaces, and that they will have to go through the Traffic and Transportation Commission. So we've had that condition on other projects before. And the last one, which is a little unusual, a certificate of approval be submitted and approved for the Plaza Court property to reflect revisions to that parking lot and the other half of the proposed pedestrian plaza. And I say unusual because we don't normally tie 2 projects together, but the problem with this one is because of the pedestrian plaza and because of the revisions the pedestrian plaza are going to require for the Plaza Court building and the parking lot and the accesses to it, there was really no way to separate them out. Because the proposed building is over the current property line, I couldn't even separate out the pedestrian plaza in this project and make it separate from the building. And so they've shown revisions to the Plaza Court site. Like this one reflects where the drive would go, but we don't have an application for that at this time. So that's why that condition is in there. And then there'll need to be a second motion about providing a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for variances to the regulation requiring a minimum height of 2 stories or 30 feet, and from the regulation requiring the first 2 floors of new construction to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way. Do you have any questions? Oh, and I need to back up. By the way, I'm Laura Griggs, Planning Department, and I'm sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. I got to work on that.
Questions? Seeing there are no questions, applicant?
We have the architect is here.
Morning. Asa Highsmith, 435 Northwest 23rd Street, Suite 214.
And if, I'm sorry, Katie, if you could go ahead and pull your, and Katie will have to drive this one, correct, Katie?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think
We're
there's
having
any-
technical difficulty with his presentation that he sent me, we can't get it to pull up, so.
Too good.
So Katie's actually going into what I had attached to the staff report, I
Okay.
believe, or,
I'm happy to do this multiple ways. I can run through her list that she's already spoke to, or I can just ask you guys if you have anything you'd like to talk about specifically in regards to our application. Happy, of course, to retread the variances, the parking lot. I think we'll have a little bit that we'd like to talk about on the question of our property and our neighbor's property. You know, just, we're two separate ownership entities. They're not our client. We can't bring their project here today, and they're on a separate timeline than us. You know, our project specifically, what we're seeking, right, is the ability to move forward prior to our neighbor bringing their project. We're happy to do so to some degree at risk. You know, we totally recognize that there's some things that got to be worked out in order for our property to be fully realized and executed. I mean, we can't really open our building without our fire lane that would operate on that pedestrian easement. So maybe, I'm addressing it here at the top, maybe we need to talk about it further near the end, but we would ask for the potential of essentially tying our certificate of occupancy to you know, a final approval of our neighbor's land. This would allow us to begin construction and at least start moving our project forward with an assumption that, right, it's going to get worked through, our neighbor's going to work through that, they're going to bring you something that you can approve, and it'll allow us then to kind of wrap things up with a bow at the end. We want to do this for a few reasons. You know, number one, the economic environment is making these projects harder and harder every day. So we would like to get our deal in place and start moving this forward prior to some future date, which is unknown to us, when this other piece will be brought and approved. So this would still give you guys the ability to, you know, be sure of what the project is prior to completion. As I said, really, it puts the risk on us, so that if we move forward in construction and start, you know, inching this project forward, there's some question about, you know, unknowns for our property and what our neighbor would do, but it would at least let us move our project down the road.
so, and we can just, so the concern staff has is currently the parking lot for Plaza Court has 2 drives on Classic Drive. And the northernmost drive is shown to be eliminated because that's really the only option. And the southern drive would have to get relocated. So the concern I would have is that if they're allowed to go forward and the road has been vacated, so they block their half of the road off, then essentially the road has 1 lane, and you have people going in and out of a parking lot, and it's only 1-lane roadway. I'm concerned about traffic circulation and impact on getting in and out and that kind of thing, which is why I didn't feel we could go forward with this project unless we had the other half of the street coming in. Because there's all kinds of work to be done. They were showing on theirs, on the Plaza Court side, on the demo drawings, they were showing removing curbs and all this other stuff, but that's not part of their application because that is owned by another entity. And so if that work is not going to be done now, but their work's going to be done, I'm just concerned what that's going to look like and how is that going to work. And so that's the concern that staff has.
And we've been working with our neighbor. I mean, we've had many meetings. We think we've got a really good plan together with them, right? So it's been discussed. We would have never brought the closure itself had we not, you know, had some meetings with them. So we think we're all on the same page. It's just, you know, there's no question that, again, partially because of the market and the economic environment, we're just not sure of the final character of, you know, things like pavers and question of some of these final material selections and how we're going to come together to execute that shared space. So we're confident that we're going to bring you guys something, and that's why I'm saying, you know, we're kind of willing to take the risk if you guys will allow it, so that we can at least just inch things forward. You know, we're not going to do anything that's going to prevent our ability to, you know, keep our neighbor happy, keep us happy, and keep you guys happy. We're definitely threading a needle here, but we feel like there is surely some way that that we can, you know, get our approval here today, but retain the ability for you guys to make the decisions that you need to make as an important body in the city. I don't know if everybody agrees on our proposed approach here, but we feel like it's reasonable and navigable. Again, the risk would be on us. You guys would still have your final say on the character of that shop.
If I could, one fast question, and I tried to comprehend everything that was in the packet. Were there letters of support and approval for the other entities that are being impacted by the project in the packet? I don't remember seeing that.
There wasn't, and sorry I stepped away. The architect for the Plaza Court side is here,
Okay,
and he would like to speak.
okay.
He had this staff report, but there was, and he was just telling me he didn't realize their project's going to hold this one up. But,
Yeah.
so Brian, you can identify.
Brian Fitzsimmons Architects, 2721 North Walker. I am the architect, I guess, representing the owner of the Plaza Court side. And what you do see on paper is the intent. We have not designed all the plaza. We wanted to make sure that it was allowed to go forward. But the intent of that parking lot is to have it one way in from 11th Street and one way out along the turning circle. And so we wouldn't have the confusion. So that basic configuration of the parking is what we intended to do. And I in no way had expected that us would hold them up, and we would not want to hold them up.
We're just concerned about if nothing changes in the parking lot and it stays the way it is, and you have the Class of Marquette project start, and then they're out there working and all of that, I want to try and figure out logistically how is access to the parking lot going to remain. I mean, maybe some of the entrances will be blocked off. Maybe that's how you're going to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess just from a purely technical point of view, if the vacation process is approved by council, in effect, the road can be immediately closed. And so that one-way scenario of Classen or one lane would automatically go away and would require blocking it, which in effect, we'd probably offer it as staging area for them during their project while we design the plaza in between, and then somewhere mesh them in the middle when the site work. It'll just, because I know all these things, it'll end up being the same contractor. And so it'll be in everyone's interest to move our project along for the site development on the Plaza Court site at the same time for economics and lack of disruption, et cetera.
So maybe there's a way we could word a condition relative to access to and from the Plaza Court parking lot being, even if it's temporary in nature, being resolved
Yes.
with the Plaza Court and with staff prior to starting of construction. And I'll have to come up with some words to do that if that sounds like something that's more accepted to both of you, because my concern is the parking lot.
Yeah, we would not want to hold up their permit. We want them to get going
Right.
as soon as they can. And we're in process of basically programming that plaza in between. We have, working with the same civil engineer, that configuration of the parking is 90% what we intend to do. We do want to make a stronger connection between plaza and their side of the building. So that's a big part of the development process. We'll put our heads together and design that together, so.
So if we had something like temporary access to and from Plaza Court parking lot be agreed on and be agreed on by both property owners and staff and installed, I mean, because it could just be barriers and whatever.
Installed prior to.
Would that work with both of you if we had wording like that?
Yeah, I think the only thing we would want is, again, to be able to begin our construction work along with whatever these measures are prior to, again, the full submission of their
Oh,
site.
Yes, because I'm saying if we replace the condition that you really don't like, which is E, and you were concerned about, you don't like it either, if we replace it with one that's specifically addressing temporary access to and from the Plaza Court parking lot, that both you guys agree on and staff agrees on, and it goes in, then you could get started. Would that work?
Yes.
Okay.
We just don't want to hold up their permit.
Right, I'll work up some wording, because you guys might have some more comments or questions to ask, so. I apologize, we don't normally do that here in the meeting.
No, that's totally fine. I started off with two things, and then it's worked into three, and I'm going to start with the third one. We've done this before, had situations where you can't get to the end because it's a circle. If you do one, X, then two, Y, and then three, you get back to the first one again, you can't get it solved. And so we develop a memorandum of understanding and attach it to a development agreement that's got two parties agreeing to it, and it's attached to some kind of a city document, which this could be that document. Some memorandum of understanding that both agree to that is attached to our motion that basically kind of closes it and says, this is what we both plan to do in some fashion. The legal guys can put it in whatever jargon it needs to be in. I'll go back to my other two. Because I think that's solvable, and I think there's precedent on how it could be done. Somebody might be able to tell me what that precedent might be, but one, I was going to say, I really think the building's handsome, and I like the fact that some of the previous projects that you've brought and we've made comments on, this would be nice for the pedestrian experience and for how spaces will be perceived from the roadway and human scale. And it's really great to see all of those things in a different fashion woven into your project to where you really don't have any comments with respect to aesthetics. I mean, I really even like the fact that you took attention to vents in a way that they don't look like vents, they look like some kind of an element as part of the aesthetic. Nicely done. But I think what I like about the building is overshadowed by the fact that we've got city staff working to find a way past telling you no and allowing us to even get here today. Because in the past, we've been in this situation and it would be held up in any jurisdiction as we're not going to go forward until all these conditions are met. And instead, we've got a way that you're just saying, tell me how the answer can be yes. And that's what we're looking at today. The answer can be yes with these 5 items, one of which you don't like. And we're going to try and craft a motion that addresses how it would be. So you're thinking that between the two entities, some sort of document, some MOU could be written, and how does that have to be attached to some kind of formal development agreement as a part of a condition?
Well, I wasn't
or-
even getting that technical, and I think it's both parties and staff.
But I think that would be nice if we would do it in a way that when we've got 2 guys that are here all the time doing projects, but at some point we might have a one-off that comes in and says, well, it was done in the past, I just want a handshake and I'll be okay. And then they get started, the person B says, I can't do anything, but once the building is going up, you can't ever get it back in the box, and now we're dealing with a
Gotcha.
situation. So I think how this gets crafted could set precedents for how it's done in the future. If you want this to be done and you don't have all of these things aligned yet, and architect and ownership B is doesn't really care if your project gets held up or not. But if a memorandum of understanding could be put together or something. So how that gets crafted, I think, would be nice to set precedents for future conditions.
We're happy to do whatever, this committee thinks is important to navigate the question and, move our project forward, so.
I think it's nice.
I just like, as far as, I think we couldn't enforce that agreement between those two parties, but if we had that attached, or if we have the other owner's authorization and consent, which is what we do a lot of times, that would also, I think, help.
Yeah,
yeah.
I just want to make sure we have the issues worked out for temporary access to and from the parking lot. That's really all I care about. So however we can get there.
So going back, thank you, Tony, to what Tony said, that's why I was asking in the packet if there had been letters that supported the project, because you would like to have something formal indicating that we as owners of the adjoining property are the properties that will be impacted by this, support moving forward this particular project.
We didn't take the time to get the letters of support. I'll be honest on this one. We felt like, because it had been so public, that the fact that there are no letters in protest shows that support. We put a lot of effort into going around and meeting with all our neighboring stakeholders, of which all are, very big-time players in the local community. St. Anthony's, Villa Teresa, Midtown Renaissance Group, and we've had support the whole time. They've been not just in support, but project partners. So we feel like we've got that broad kind of coalition of I guess, motivation and weight behind, the direction we're going. And the fact that, we've had no official protest from any of those groups, I think, is kind of, we hope, the evidence of that.
Right, and totally agree with that. It's just, we have had projects in the past where that was the information presented, but we found out that was not exactly a fair representation of where they were. I just think that that would be important if we were to do a motion, that there be some letters of support of the intention to support that project.
Good morning, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates. So one thing that we do have, we have a letter of authorization from the Plaza Court property owners that would have been in your packet on the on the street closure application. So they have been engaged with us and a formal applicant on the other application that you all had heard. So they are formally part of this, and as Brian and Asa both mentioned, they've been at every meeting talking through how this plaza can work in regard to the Plaza Court building. So I'll just reiterate what Brian mentioned, how we plan to access the revised parking lot, what space would be left over for them. They've been through this with us since the very beginning, and that's Asa's doing and bringing them on board. So we believe them as being most impacted, other than our property owner, that they'd be in support, which is what led to the authorization letter to move forward.
So if we said something, because I'm trying to circle back around, so if they worked with staff and the owner of the Plaza Court building on constructing temporary access to and from the Plaza Court parking lot and have it completed prior to commencement of construction on the Class and Marquette, obviously anywhere in there you can insert memorandum of understanding or whatever document wording you want in there, but I think that's what staff is wanting.
I think it could be much more simplified, where, as Susan alluded to, is authorization or letter of support for them to move forward. It could be that simple without getting into
And I
the
disagree with
technicalities
that
of the
one,
parking lot.
because I need to know the details of how we're going to work out the access to and from the parking lot before it gets started. Because I can just see a real problem with that.
Can the access to and from be at a 50,000-foot level of entrance from point A and exit from point B
Yeah,
in one direction.
I'm just, and it's going to be temporary in nature. I'm not, we know how they wanted to do the permanent one, yeah. So it's like one of them's going to be blocked off and the other one is either going to stay and there'll be cones getting them down to the traffic circle because maybe that, the southernmost one stays where it is, but we have to route people and then they end up putting one-way signs or something. It can be that simple.
I think that the idea is that you get the very general intent of how it's going to work without any detail to, or any kind of specificity, but it allows them to.
He has a good idea. So what we can agree to, if we lose TEE and we replace it with a construction access plan will be submitted to staff on how we plan to manage this, I think that's all we need. We're not opposed to them as private entities having an MOU, but to the city attorney's standpoint, that would be only between them. The city would really have no involvement or enforcement of that.
I think if we have that, it really kind of negates all the rest of the items.
Yes,
because
okay,
it
you say
shows-
construction access plan submitted to staff? You
Correct.
said? Okay.
So we'll show what we're going to tear out and where barriers or temporary orange cones would be placed so they
That'll work
maintain
with me.
access.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that way you're
That will
showing
replace-
construction that is off property, that is a part of what you need in order to commence construction on property. And then in order for that to occur, by the time they go get permits, somebody's gonna ask for the adjacent property owner to say that the construction that's happening off property is acceptable. And that's a simple letter then.
Yeah, okay.
I know for me that I'm acceptable and think that is perfectly fine to move forward. So with that, are there any additional questions or comments
Is there anything else you want?
for the applicant?
Is there anything else you guys want me to talk about? I think is my question. I want to be expedient always up here. I want to be respectful of people's time. I could talk for hours about this project. I'd rather you guys tell me if there's specific points that I should talk about. I'm happy to address the variance requests, the parking lot, any detail of the project.
Could you speak further about the one-story prow, and in particular how you might strategize any mechanical exhausting on that portion? Because I'm not seeing chase through the residential portion, or it's a pretty shallow parapet, and I think I'm okay with the sensitivity towards the roundabout, but I would want to make sure that we're not dumping massive makeup unit on top of that
sure.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've thought a lot about the prow. We do have mechanical chase prepared for any exhausting. It will go to the roof. It won't be out of the one-story prow portion. Matter of fact, we were so concerned with the aesthetics of the roof of the prow and its visibility that part of our current design is a ballasted roof. So rather than seeing just that white TPO membrane that's so typical these days, which does tend to, right, it collects silt and soot somehow up there, and you look down at a roof and you see like those drainage, marks and stuff. And not that older roofs were prettier per se, but a ballasted roof, for those that don't know, is essentially where, you take a typical membrane and you come in and you put a nice gravel, kind of like consistent gravel plane on top of that. Right, it's still drainable. Those like bigger rocks allow all the water to get through, and right, it adds a little bit of weight to the project, adds a little bit of cost, but we feel like helps make for a much prettier execution of that one-story piece. As I said, we've got chase space kept out. It's around our primary vertical circulation there on the east side, so it's kind of tucked around the elevator and that common area. We don't know, we're not positive of what that potential future tenant might need. We've worked with our MEP engineers to try to come up with an adequate amount of sizing for any kitchen equipment that they might have, and with the plan of taking it all the way to the roof. We've got a very high parapet. We're actually at guardrail height all the way around the parapet. Part of the reason for that is, as you guys probably saw in the project proposal, we do have a significant proposal of solar use on the project. Because of the specifics of, the Downtown Design Review District, we have a need to visually shield most of that. And so, along, of course, with just worker safety for any maintenance of those panels. So we got a really high roof edge parapet, and there's just, based on our own internal sightline reviews, there's just really no concerns about any of this being visible. So, that get it? Okay. As far as the one-story nature, we put a lot of ink on paper on that. So if you guys want to talk again specifically, I'm happy to address the one-story nature of it and our reasoning behind that and our purpose of seeking the variance. But just want to address the things that need to be addressed too. So.
I think your one story on the corner is perfect. I think it activates it. It's the scale is nice for pedestrians. I just wanted to say, good job. I think the packet covers all of my questions. I love that y'all are looking at screening the parking lot so the cars aren't like a visual barrier to this area. You're activating the corners, you're planning lighting that connects the tradition of the area and the style, but also like having that flair internally of what you're trying to build along the plaza side. So I just wanted to say good job, and thank you for bringing all the info I need.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Are there other questions for the applicant? Seeing as there are none at this point in time, what's your pleasure? How do we want to move on this?
Make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the conditions that A, the applicant obtains a variance from the Board of Adjustments to the regulation requiring a minimum height of 2 stories or 30 feet, and from the regulation requiring that the first 2 floors of new construction to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way. B, that CE 01081 is approved by City Council. C, the right-of-way of Classen Drive between Northwest 10th Street and Northwest 11th Street is vacated in District Court. D, the applicant receives the necessary approvals from the Traffic and Transportation Commission and the City Council for the proposed set-in parking spaces in the right-of-way. And E, that there be a graphic
Construction access plan be submitted to staff.
for approval by staff. It doesn't have to come back to us.
Oh, no, it doesn't come back to you. Be
Okay.
submitted to staff for approval. Construction access plan for Plaza Court parking lot. Be submitted to staff for approval. I think that's what I
So
heard
be
you
it.
say. Okay.
Second? Do I have a second?
Schmidt, second.
Okay, we have a Tony Eric motion. Sorry. There we go.
And I'll make a recommendation, a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for variances to the regulation requiring a minimum height of 2 stories or 30 feet, and from the regulation requiring the first 2 floors of new construction to be at or within 10 feet of the street right-of-way.
Schmidt, second.
Okay, so we know that Tony made the motion, not
Eric, right?
and that Eric seconded it. So just as a reminder, you verbalize the motion and hit the button for both motion and second. We're trying to get this thing to work. So now Eric. And did we see the vote?
Yes, I saw it.
Yes, we saw the vote.
You saw the vote? Okay, good. I missed it.
So both
Okay.
motion passes. Thank you guys very
Okay.
much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, under other business, we have CE-01075 at 817 Dean A. McGee Avenue.
Boy, you cleared the room. So, since we've already approved the project, I wasn't even going to pull the pictures up, but I can if you all need to. Once again, this is the alley for the project at 4th and Chartel, Dean and McGee area. The one thing you always hear from staff is our concern for location of back of house, such as trash pickup and deliveries. Well, they have that all taken care of, and they actually have access to the trash area off of the vacated Francis. It's a paved roadway, and so that is not even on a public street. That's not even where people are going to see it. And so we think they did a really good job of taking care of that. We're still concerned about losing alleys, but in this case, they pretty much checked all the boxes, and it doesn't go anywhere. It can't go anywhere to the east because there's a huge apartment complex. It's just been finished, and it's not into Classen, but I don't think it can go all the way because there's that electric substation down there with all the big stuff, so it can't go all the way to Classen. So it's not really an alley that would give us much of a east-west access. So anyway, I buried from my staff report. But staff is recommending approval of this because they've really addressed everything that was a concern of ours, including the property on the corner. And as I mentioned earlier, the piece of the alley that's staying in allows the access to the trash and everything for the property owner on the corner, where there's a new tenant coming in, by the way. So watch for the new signs to go up. And we're happy about that. So do you have any questions for me? And the applicant is here that can answer questions if you have any. He might have to say something because I'm sure you're on the clock. Okay.
Got a bill somehow, Laura. No, Mark Sitz out with Johnson and Associates. I just want to say thank you to staff. I think we submitted this application back in May.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
And we were holding it back from you all so you could see the project. Because I would contend that what Mario and his team did on locating the trash enclosure and how it was being accessed is probably one of the best that I've seen in one of the kind of Texas donut wrap style projects, and I think I've lived in most of them downtown. So it was nice to see the dumpsters not being pulled out in the public way and sitting there for days. So I just want to say thank you to staff, and we'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions? Thank you. Motion? Yeah.
So this is, if you read it, you're making a recommendation to the Planning Commission on this one. So it's not a CA, it's a CE. Just another letter of the alphabet. And so approve the application on the basis the project complies, whoops. And staff copied the wrong recommendation.
Thank
so,
you. It was like, that's not the recommendation that
No,
we
it isn't.
received.
So, so you are providing a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for this request to vacate the alley, close the alley, excuse me.
As stated?
Make a motion as stated.
Okay, so we have a Tony motion and we have a
Justin.
I'll
Justin
second.
second. Okay. Thanks for catching me on that.
Okay, ready to vote? Motion passes.
6-0.
So that brings us to communications. Are there any questions for staff concerning administrative approvals?
What have I got?
Okay, seeing as there are none, we're at comments from planning department staff. Any comments at
Well,
this
the
time?
only thing I would say about the administrative approvals is we're really excited that they've started coming in up there on 13th Street at Broadway on the buildings that are being sold that used to be the concrete people, and that's, I can't remember their name. DeLisi, yes, on the DeLisi, and I have another one in. And they're coming in where they can be done administratively. So they're coming in like one building at a time. And so I'm real excited that they're coming in on those and they're adding some different uses in there. And so you'll start seeing some changes up in that area. So as far as, we do have a meeting next month. I was going to turn around and look at one of the people that were in the audience because he had turned in a project on the deadline. So I'll be doing probably an early quorum call just to make sure we have everybody, or as at least 4. Now that we're fully staffed again, I'm so excited to have that. And Haiti, do you have anything about?
Well, I was going to say our meeting next
Oh,
month.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for remembering
Yes,
that.
our meeting next month will not be in here. They are doing some work to the HVAC. I'm really cold, so maybe that'll be good right now. So we will be in the Embark large conference room. It'll be a little more low-tech than this situation, but we will look at printing packets for you all if you need them. If you don't want a printed packet, if you want to bring a device of some sort, let us know and we'll save on that paper. But if you need a paper packet,
I'll
we can
include that
do
in my emails. And so for those
Yeah.
of you who might not know where the Embark Conference Room is, it's on Main Street.
It's right next to Clarity.
Next to
So-
Clarity. But we'll provide you with, it's actually in the Arts parking garage.
Yep.
So you park above and you just walk down to the meeting. So we'll still send you the link to the packet, because that will still be out there. It's just we're not going to be able to have PrimeGov to vote and do this stuff. So which is why we're talking about, we're probably going to have to print you guys a packet. But we'll work out those details as we get closer. Thank you for remembering that, because
Yes.
I forgot.
And I think we might have already said this at the November meeting, but we are planning another commission committee training. We'll have that sometime this spring, and we'll get you guys dates and times and locations for that when we have that set. If there's any information you want to see included in that training, please let us know, and we'll try to include that.
And the last thing is, since I just put together a notebook for Eric, if anybody would like, if they want to bring their notebook in to see if it needs to be updated, some of you have had your notebooks for a very long time. Some of you probably never look at your notebooks because you know it all. But feel free to drop them off. Feel free to bring them to a meeting, and I'd be glad to look through it if, to see that. And I think
And if you don't have one, let us know, because we had a brief time.
Oh, you
when
don't have one?
Some folks were getting appointed during COVID, or you
Oh,
had a
okay.
baby, all that exciting stuff.
I'll get one made up for you. Sorry about that. Hopefully everybody else has one.
So I feel guilty when you said the notebook. I haven't looked at that notebook in 4 years. So
There will be a test at your
Okay.
next meeting.
I was going to say that you guys are so diligent and so good about providing all of the key information
try.
in the packets that it really is almost irrelevant unless there is, of course, a question.
Right, and we try to do that, and I think I had previously provided you guys with a copy of your schedule for next year. If you don't have it, let me know. Eric has it in his new notebook. Please put that on your calendar so that when you get the quorum call, it's not a shock to you to say, oh, I forgot I had a meeting that day.
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
You bet. With that, are there any comments from committee members? Well, since this is our last committee meeting of 2022, congratulations, everybody. Woohoo, another year gone. And as we move on to 2023, a thank you from the staff to all of the staff that support these committee meetings. You guys do a phenomenal job, and we appreciate it, because I know I've served on a couple of others, and this is probably one of the most efficient with the amount of detail that's necessary in order to approve and take action on the applications. So thank you. And to the committee members, we wish you happy holidays. On that
Thank you.
note, we are adjourned.